Donald Trump threw a curveball Donald Trump and J.D. Vance through these own negotiations saying, I also want you guys to raise the debt ceiling because, gosh, we're spending so much money. We're coming up on the legal authorized amount to borrow money, and he doesn't want to have to deal with it as president. So he's like, get it over with or get rid of it altogether. I get it. I get politically why he doesn't want to do this, and I get it. But I also feel like if you have no guardrails anymore, then you're just going to keep spending.
Well, yeah, listen, President Trump, I appreciate what he's done, what he wants to do, but he also doesn't want to touch the guardrail of entitlements, right? And so this is not surprising that he doesn't mind raising the debt ceiling and putting on any sort of guardrails, because frankly, I don't think he's interested in touching Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid, the entitlements, which is really one of the big
No, they are the drivers. That's it. I mean, you can't address real debt.
They really are. So, that's part of the populist part of him and what he speaks to, which is big government is actually okay if it's big for me and big for the issues that I really care about. Now, that goes in some tension with DOGE. DOGE is trying to cut, $2 trillion from the budget, but they're obviously not touching entitlements either. They're not touching mandatory spending. So, he did it. I'm not surprised. He doesn't want to deal with it down the line, but hopefully somebody, J.D. Vance, will want to talk about fiscal sanity and fiscal responsibility if there's a J.D. Vance, if he takes up the mantle and is elected after President Trump leaves office in 4 years.
Tom, you cover the Hill, right? You talk to a lot of these members. We are spending over $1 trillion on interest on the debt, on interest. That's more than we spend on our entire national defense. The DOD budget is less than that. We spend more on the interest payments. I know it's not popular, but I feel like at some point, if we don't get serious with spending, we're going to be screwed.
Yeah. It's, just hearing these numbers, I feel like I need to start taking some of this 120 life. I mean, God. It's crazy about this is it's like we go through these elections, right? And we are in the trenches. This is such a regular thing for us. But after every election, we come back to reality, which is, okay, guys, guess what? We got to deal with this. All right, okay, why were politicians just elected? All right, you got to go in and deal with this. As Patrice mentioned here, this so much is already locked in by statute. This is legally required, and this gets to the Department of Government Efficiency. How can you cut $2 trillion? What are your options? This also gets back to in the spirit of the season, legislative Christmas trees like the CR, which turned into an omnibus. Larded up with everything that every constituency would love to see. You start dealing with things like that, and it becomes very hard to eliminate spending. It becomes very hard to cut spending. To reach numbers like the trillions, you have to look past the post office, and you have to start looking at defense. That's the level of spending that people are talking about. It's not the rinky-dink stuff. It's like when you start getting into moving from the B's to the T's. All right, what's the old joke? The Ways and Means guys would tell you, $1 million here, $1 million there. Pretty soon you got $1 billion. Well, $1 billion here and $1 billion there. Pretty soon you got $1 trillion. All right. These are incredibly huge numbers.
Steve, the problem is I don't get a sense. I tell this story often. And Newt Gingrich in 1994, when he was campaigning for speaker, would run around with an ice bucket and say, I don't know, it was like $200,000 that Congress was spending, putting ice outside of every member of Congress's office. And this is in the 1990s when they all have refrigerator and freezers because some kids knew some kid's father whose second cousin was a member of Congress and he got the patronage job. And Newt said, we've got to cut this kind of wasteful spending out. They're not even trying anymore. This is what embarrasses me as Republicans. There's PBS, NPR, the National Endowment for the Humanities, all fine things, I'm sure, to some degree, but why is the government in that business? And the list goes on and on. We're not even trying.
Right.
No, exactly. And by the way, why does the Department of Education exist at the federal level? And now that we have full control of government, it better be gone, right? Because we promised the people that. Let's see if it happens or not. I'm skeptical, to be honest. And I have to say, I think the idea of raising the debt ceiling right now is incredibly dangerous, particularly what's going on in the real world, both at the Main Street level and at the Wall Street level. And what I mean by that, at the Main Street level, right now, according to Redfin, the big realty company, according to Redfin, people who make $50,000 or less right now in this country, 3/4 of them are unable to pay their rent. So think about that. Middle class and modest means people literally cannot pay their rent, a super majority of them right now. That is directly because of the reckless borrowing and spending in Washington, D.C. And then to take it to the Wall Street level, I mentioned the bond market before, but it's not just the bond market. Look at the gold market, for example. Look at Bitcoin. Both of those, gold and Bitcoin, at all-time highs against the dollar. Why? Because investors believe right now that dollars will be increasingly worthless because they're going to be the government is going to inflate its way to paying the debt, because that's the only option right now for the government. So it's a dangerous time. These are very precarious times. Donald Trump is inheriting an absolute mess, okay? It's the opposite of what he handed off to Joe Biden. He handed off an economy that was recovering big time from the spring of 2020 lockdowns with low inflation. He is now inheriting an economy that in most ways is decelerating with massive inflationary problems and a $36 trillion debt. So it's a really tough job, right, to this kind of a baton pass on to Donald Trump. I think he's capable of it. I think people like Scott Bessent, his incoming Treasury Secretary, Russ Vought, OMB, all of them are capable of handling this, momentous task. But it's going to require really serious, really hard choices. And government in Washington, D.C. is not good at making serious, hard choices.
So am I reading you right? You don't think the debt ceiling should be raised, correct?
Correct. I do
Yeah,
not.
I'm with you.
Absolutely not.
I think,
And I think the bond market will freak out if it is. I really do.
okay, well, I agree with you. I think that taking the guardrails off and allowing spending, it gives Washington one more excuse not to deal anything. Patrice, you name-checked DOGE, this Department of Government Efficiency that's being led by Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk. Do you have any hope that they will actually be successful?
I do. I understand that they don't have any sort of fiscal power. Everything that they're going to achieve is going to be delivered to President Trump in recommendations that he can then turn into executive orders. You have now a House panel headed by Marjorie Taylor Greene. That's, I guess, probably supposed to be working with them to figure out, okay, what are the legislative opportunities that are there? So if nothing else, I'm looking forward to all the recommendations they come forward with, going on the record, and then President Trump trying to at least implement those through executive order. Maybe now then that puts some accountability on the shoulders of Congress to say, okay, how can we make these permanent? Because obviously we've seen in lots of different regulatory areas, one administration has an executive order, the next one comes in and flips it over and erases it. And President Trump had a great, if you remember in Trump 1.0, for every new regulation, 2 had to be cut. That was fantastic. It forced Congress, these agencies to do sunsetting on a lot of arcane, costly, unnecessary, burdensome regulations for a lot of businesses and corporations. So I think DOGE will probably start from that starting point and start to identify where these areas are. And because you're talking about Elon Musk and Vivek, who is very adept at getting messages out in the public, they're not just going to wait for a big, long report that goes to the president that you hope gets picked up by ABC or Fox or PBS and NewsHour. They're going to be filtering it out through video content, through podcasting, getting these things out there so regular Americans can provide some accountability too, to say, okay, I want to see how can we turn this executive order into something that's made permanent.
Tom, based on your time on Capitol Hill, and at least the initial reception, and actually, frankly, the fact that some Democrats have reached across the aisle and said, all right, I'll help with you guys on this. Do you think that there's any chance that DOGE actually succeeds in cutting government waste?
Yeah, I think so. I've had this debate with a number of sources over the last month or so. And, I look at it as, number one, the second Trump administration, no matter who it is, officially nominated, officially in the White House or in these advisory roles like the DOGE, has a better understanding of the levers of power inside the executive, all the agencies where all the spending is happening. They have a much better sense of it. And the other part too is that, I was talking with a source about this probably a couple weeks ago, about this timeline of bringing people in from Musk's operation, some of the folks who have worked with Vivek Ramaswamy over the years, these landing teams, so to say. They're not taking any pay. It's not a formal position, but going in and over the next 6, 7, 8 months or so, having an understanding, really looking at the books to see, all right, this is what we can do. All right, this is what we can do with executive action. This is what will require, legislative action. I think that increased expertise gives it a better chance at succeeding. But of course, as again, the counterpoint to that would be, what we have seen this week, which is, when the fun house is in session, all right, and when everybody's in the halls in Congress, it is a lot easier to mess around with that dynamic. All right, it's not one branch of government. There's three. All right, and you have that interplay, so that creates problems. Certainly, when people start debating these things, like in the old what was it, I don't know if he has it anymore, the cigar room. Tom Cole used to have that right off outside the chamber. You always know when a real bill is happening when you smell the cigar smoke.
Steve Cortes, you talked about how to message this properly when it came to the CR. I think the same thing is right. Patrice mentioned this. Like, start with the simple, the outrageous. Get people fired up about the waste. And I get the inefficiencies, and that's where a lot more money is. But the reason that Newt used the ice bucket is because it was symbolic of the waste. And so I think that Elon and Vivek are both smart guys. They're both business guys that understand the reality of waste, because it was their money that they're putting into a company. So they're like, if there's waste, I don't get profit. I think that the strategy is just as important as more important than even some of the tactics and the looking at, because if they get the American people to say, I'm outraged by that, that's a waste of my money, because Newt harnessed that. And he got people to say, I'm pissed that I'm working 2 jobs, I'm working 60 hours a week, and you guys are wasting my money.
Yeah. Sean, I think you're 100% correct. Look, I hope that the actual, tactical reforms of Doge are significant. But what I believe is going to be more significant, I think you're exactly correct, is the messaging and narrative change. And what I mean by that is changing the way of thinking of the American people in a way that is lasting. Of saying that, for example, a government that can't even regulate itself certainly should not be regulating my life, my business, my company, right? And if we get that kind of regulatory reform, because the regulatory burden of the Leviathan of Washington, D.C., it is stifling for this country. And it's one of the reasons that we don't have the kind of productivity that we have. And this is so important because, look, I've been given a pretty dour assessment of where things are regarding the debt, and I am extremely worried. But let me also point the way out. What is the escape hatch, as it were? If we're not willing to have entitlement reform, and that seems politically impossible, well, then we have to get way, way more productive as a country, not just government. As a country, we need to get massively more efficient and productive. And if we do that, then it is possible for us to grow our way out of this massive
I hate
debt.
that, though. I hate that because it just allows the spending to continue. I get your point. Yeah. And that's
I'm saying it's got to be both. It's got to be both.
Yes.
Right? At the same time. No, I am not pro spending. So we have to cut spending. But again, there's only so much juice from cutting discretionary spending.
Right.
If we won't touch defense and we won't touch entitlements, and it doesn't appear that Trump's willing to touch either one, then there's just not that much to squeeze out of discretionary. So let's do it, absolutely, but let's relieve the regulatory burden. And that's where I think the messaging and the narrative change of Doge can be really, really significant and lasting for this country and get us productive again. And if we do that at the same time, concurrently, then we can at least get the debt under control.
Patrice, you had something to say.
Yeah. No, well, no, I 100% agree. The messaging is huge on this. I was in some meetings with some Hill staffers who were part of the 2017 tax cuts discussion. And I said to them, they were fantastic. And cutting corporate taxes are great. And they actually feed right into workers' paychecks through bonuses, bigger paychecks, new benefits. But that was not messaged. And unfortunately, the left took the TCJA and turned it into, just tax cuts for the wealthy. And that is a misperception that persists today. How do we ensure that that the same thing doesn't happen here with what Doge is able to accomplish and what President Trump is able to accomplish? And I think it is very much about the messaging, very much about ensuring that you've got people like podcasts, like what we're doing right now, who are not just waiting for hopefully the White House press corps to actually report on something that's happening, good news, but actually saying, no, this is exactly what's happening. When you say two regulations out for every new one in, this is actually what it means for a small business. That means a small business is saving 10, 20 hours of paperwork and time and money for an accountant that they have to hire so they can invest in their business. When you're talking about the tax cuts, that means that you may get a bonus. That means that you don't get a new tax increase January 1 of 2026. That is why this is so important. Oh, and even corporate tax cuts are good for you too as a regular person. So the messaging is going to be huge. It's a huge piece of it. And that's why if Elon Musk and Vivek, but especially if Elon Musk was not part of Doge, I don't think that you would be able to get the kind of bang for your buck out of this quasi-government oversight type agency. You just wouldn't, because even though Vivek is doing his videos, his reach is nearly not as strong as Elon Musk's reach.
Yeah, I love the way that Elon always piles on to Vivek's tweets. It's like, hey, brother, I got you. I'll amplify this. One quick point on the mandatory entitlement spending, which is Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, VA. There are reforms that make sense that could yield huge savings without touching the programs. They've got to be willing to at least do smart, efficient changes that make sense. I mean, they did that with Veterans Choice, by the way, in the VA, and everybody was happy with it. So there's ways to do that. All right, I want to go around the horn, Tom LoBianco, and start with you before we get into winners and losers. I have a simple question. I want a simple answer. On January 20th, when Donald Trump is sworn into office, is Mike Johnson the Speaker of the House? Now, I will add some context. Thomas Massey from Kentucky is already saying that he is a absolute 100% no. And this is what Andy Harris from Maryland said. There's an increasing number of people after what happened this week who said they're on the fence whether to back Johnson for re-election as Speaker. So, Tom LoBianco, yes or no, on January 20th, when Donald Trump takes the oath of office, is Mike Johnson the Speaker of the House?
Yes.
Steve Cortes, is Mike Johnson Speaker of the House?
No, nada.
Patrice Onwuka, is Mike Johnson the Speaker of the House?
Yes.
I think we'll know more in 24 hours. I'm with Steve more than you guys, meaning if he can't broker this deal and it gets messy, he's done. By the way, you need a Speaker of the House to certify the results for president. I mean, we're going down some massive rabbit holes. All right, as we do on Thursdays, we always get to winners and losers. I have been really impressed the last couple of weeks, so I dug deep. I have some that I hope no one steals this time. Tom, I'm going to start with you. Who won the week? Who lost the week?
Oh, man, I'm so glad I'm first. Elon Musk.
See, I knew someone was going to say that.
Yep.
All right,
I'm probably going for the low-hanging fruit here, definitely.
Who lost the week, in your opinion?
Mike Johnson.
Okay, see, I still think the verdict's out. He could have really lost it. He could recover. But I think right now, Thursday, yeah. All right, Steve Cortes, who won, who lost?
Lost the week, AOC seems to be losing her generational battle on the Democrat side, which frankly shocks me because I think, of course, I agree with her on nothing, but I think she's an incredibly effective leader for their side. They should give her that seat, but it's obviously not up to me. So I'll say she is the loser. For the winner, you already mentioned Thomas Massey. If I can,
by the way, Steve, real quick, you realize all these other old bulls got out of the way when the younger person said, I want to be ranking member of the committee. Jerry Conley from Virginia said, bring it, AOC. Of the one person that I thought might topple somebody, AOC had the juice. I mean, of all these other people, I was like, what are you doing? Why are you folding like a cheap suit? AOC, I think that the dirty story in that is that Nancy Pelosi was like, I'm not letting that woman rise.
That could be.
All right. Who do you have as your winner?
Yeah, as winner, co-winner to two Kentuckians, to Rand Paul and to Thomas Massey. I think both of them have shown just incredible principle. You mentioned what Massey already said about the speaker. Similarly, Rand Paul saying he's backing Kennedy. He's backing Tulsi Gabbard. So I think Kentuckians, I'm proud of my Tennessee representatives, senators, and House members. The folks in Kentucky should be really proud of their delegation right now. I think they both won.
Yeah, and by the way, Rand has been a champ on spending too. Like he's been going after the speaker like a spider monkey. Patrice, Who's your winner and loser?
Winners are President Trump's nominees. So far, they've weathered some pretty rocky weeks, and none of them are really making headlines this week, which is probably a good thing. And my loser, Fani Willis, breaking news. She's
Oh, that's
in Georgia.
Well done.
Which is, I think probably what the last big case for President Trump. Well, maybe one of the bigger ones. We knew it was going to fall apart, but boy, the egg on her face. Another Black woman, Democrat, has proven that she does not run the show.
Yeah, rule of thumb. Don't go after the president of the United States while you're appointing your boyfriend that you're having an affair with. Anyway, that's just a lesson learned. All right, for the first time in weeks, I actually have a winner and a loser that nobody picked.
What's up?
The winner is Herschel Walker, named ambassador to the Bahamas. I mean, if you're going to be ambassador to the Bahamas. Like, that to me, like, that's the gig, right? I mean, I can't even imagine how tough, like, ambassador, we've got a big crisis. The tide is not going out as quick as we thought. I mean, like, I'm
Can
kidding.
you imagine those dinners? Oh, all that fish, yummy.
I'm kidding, Bahamas, but I'm just saying, like, that's the. And my loser, hashtags. Elon Musk put out this tweet the other day that said hashtags are done, no more. They don't affect the algorithm; they're out. So no more hashtags. They're the losers of the week. Anyway, thank you guys for being us. What a great Thursday panel we had. I appreciate all you guys joining us. Total insight that you're not going to see anywhere else on this debt ceiling and why it matters. Tomorrow, by the way, Victor Davis Hanson. And on Monday, you want to know whether we're prepared to fight? Eric Prince will be here, the founder of Blackwater, Navy SEAL. He's going to give us insight about our readiness as a military and as a country. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss this because Eric Prince does not hold back. Tomorrow, Victor Davis Hanson. Monday, Eric Prince. Remember, if you're looking for insight in the inauguration, I cannot get you tickets. I promise you I can't. But I have information in SeanSpicer.com on how to get tickets. So if you're interested in going to a parade, a ball, whatever, I can at least tell you where you can get that stuff. It's in SeanSpicer.com. Sign up. It's free, but it's the Christmas time. So if you want to either give yourself the gift of becoming a VIP or gift it to someone else, nothing says I love you like a subscription to SeanSpicer.com. You will be loved by family members. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll see you back here tomorrow with Victor Davis Hanson.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.